Well, I see the populist revolt. My view is that it's a clueless populist vote, and there's no attachment to liberty in this revolt. That's the problem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with Robert Wenzel. He's the editor and publisher of EconomicPolicyJournal.com and of Target Liberty. He also hosts the podcast, The Robert Wenzel Show. We're going to be talking about the economy, the Dow Jones hitting all-time highs here, S&P, and get his thoughts on precious metals and a few other things. But without any further ado, Robert, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Good to speak with you.
Well, I appreciate your time. Let's get right into it. You know, we have trillions of dollars that have been pumped into the system. Talking about the Fed here, especially since the 2008 crisis. Right now, the Dow Jones is over 21,000. The S&P is over 2,400. And we know since the election, more than $3 trillion have been pumped into the stock market, obviously because of valuations going higher. So I'll start you here. Are markets overvalued in your opinion?
Well, the term overvalued is tricky because it really depends upon what the Federal Reserve does from here. As you correctly pointed out, they've pumped a lot of money into the system, and if they continue to pump money in, that will mean even higher prices. Now, there are some indications, some of the data that I monitor suggests they might just be at the tip of a slowdown here in their money growth, and if that continues and sort of accelerates on the downside, we're probably at or near the peak. But there's a lot of cross trends in the stock market and economy right now. So I wasn't, by the way, surprised at all by this advance. As a matter of fact, I have something I call the EPJ Daily Alert, which is a daily investment advisory that goes out to subscribers. And just prior to the election, I said, regardless of who wins, whether it's Hillary or Donald Trump, buy. And because there's a lot of money in the system, and it's going to continue to flow, and I expect much higher prices, and that's what you're seeing now.
Robert, in a previous interview, I heard you talk about the bull market we've seen, and you described it climbing a wall of worry. And you pointed something out that I thought was really interesting, and that is, if people are worried, that's still bullish for the market, because that means that there's more room for the markets to continue to go higher, because it implies that there's still money left on the sidelines. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe if you would just explain that a little more, and let us know if you think we're getting to that point where the rest of that money that's been on the sidelines is now entering the market, and how much longer that can go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, basically, there's an old Wall Street adage that the stock market crawls a wall of worry, and basically what that means is there are people that are worried that the stock market shouldn't be going up, or that it's gone as high as it can, and so they're worried about getting in. But slowly, more as the market continues higher, slowly more and more of those people pour in. So as long as there's sideline money, and by sideline money, I'm thinking of money that's either held with a broker or can move into a brokerage account very, very quickly, people that are watching the market and things like that. The more and more sideline money there is, the more and more upside potential there is, because these people are not in the market. At some point, you can see a speculative blow-off, and what occurs at that point is just everybody is in the market, and so there's no sort of quote-unquote new money to come in to push it any higher. But you've got the Federal Reserve backing up the advance by pumping more money into the system. So it can continue for quite a while. There's this tendency where right now, at a period when the Federal Reserve sort of on a seasonal basis, the money supply slows down, and it doesn't really matter what the reason is, whether it's seasonal or anything else, but when money supply slows down, you can have at least a pullback. So we're just at the very early stages of that, and it appears it's going to be a severe downturn in money supply growth this time around, or at least that's the way it's starting out. So there could be problems further down the line here within a couple of months or so. We're very, very powerful upside activity now catching the eye of more and more people. So we might be close to a speculative blow off, and you have the possibility of Donald Trump putting border taxes or a tariff or something along those lines, and that'll hurt a number of sectors, especially the retail sector, very, very hard. So there's definite cross trends right now, and I'm nervous for the general market, but I also happen to think that inflation is heating up, price inflation, and so I'm advising people to make their bets that way in gold, silver, and stocks that will benefit from inflation.
Sure. And I want to get your thoughts maybe on the political front a little bit here. Is there any fundamental truth as to why the stock market is going higher? Basically, the economy anticipating tax cuts and deregulation and other things that would be a little more fundamental than just debt inflating the stock market. And you have in this situation business owners being excited about the stock market because of Trump in the White House. And to be fair, and I don't mean to sound crass or insensitive, but when Obama was elected, you had a lot of welfare recipients and government workers who were excited about the economy. And now that's shifted some. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah. With regard to Trump and what the Trump administration might do, there's no question that he might eliminate regulations in a number of different sectors. For example, the financial sector is an area where he may do this. I mean, there's three sort of legs to the stool that hold up the Trump administration: Goldman Sachs, military, and oil. And you're going to see changes in regulations in the financial sector, a lot of things being removed that have been hampering the Wall Street crowd from doing as much as they want. So in my EPJ Daily Alert, we have a position in the financial sector right now, financial ETFs. Then you've got the military. We've got positions in the defense sector. Trump is going to do a tremendous expansion in the spending for military. That's obvious, and he's got military men all around him, and we're probably going to go into a couple more wars with combat troops and everything else. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of money spent there. And then the third one, which is sort of a quiet one, but in addition to all the military people and the Goldman Sachs people that are involved with Trump, the other group is the oil sector. You have Rex Tillerson, who is the Secretary of State, who comes out of ExxonMobil. Then you have the head of the EPA, who's going to gut the EPA and make it much, much easier for domestic oil production and drilling. And then you have Rick Perry, who's in charge of the energy sector. So coming out of Texas, which is an oil state. So you've got regulations coming down and spending going up in the military sector. So those three sectors are sectors that have been strong and probably will continue to be strong for a long time.
Sure. And as far as
the general overall market, that's more driven by the money supply activity. And if that money supply growth slows, as I've said, I mean that's going to hurt the general market.
Sure. Let's get back to tariffs. You mentioned that, and I want to ask you if this is a good or bad thing for the U.S. overall. Obviously, there's trade deals that are in place that have been bad, and I think the attempt is to at least go after that and to balance the playing field some here. In general, is this good or bad for the U.S., and is it good or bad for the U.S. stock market?
Well, it's terrible for both. Basically, whenever you're putting tariffs on or some other type of border tax, what you're doing is it's complex. In some cases, you're raising the prices. In other cases, you're preventing the products from being sold here. But it's shrinking the productivity of the world in a sense, and making it much more difficult for us to gain from products that are made overseas. And whenever you're limiting the number of products, you're really lowering the standard of living for people in the country. And so Trump talks about a fair tax, where he says, well, if they're taxing us, we're going to tax them. But that's kind of silly. If China, say, is putting a heavy tax or tariff on some product, that just makes it a situation where the people in China can't benefit from that product. So it doesn't really make any sense to sort of quote unquote battle that by putting tariffs, so it makes it more difficult for people in the United States to buy products from China and other countries. It's silliness. It just lessens the amount of product that's available. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just jump in. But if you take it a step back, though, those tariffs, you could say, are killing jobs here in the U.S. Because, it's making it more difficult for the U.S. to be a producer. Is there any truth, or do you see any positive on that front?
Well, what goes on there is you have a shift in the type of jobs available. There's really a myth about the government, quote unquote, creating jobs, as though
I agree with that.
Set amount of jobs, and you need a president to step in and somehow create jobs. This defies economics 101. Basically, labor is a product like anything else, and when you have supply and demand factors that influence prices, they adjust to the market, and there's never really an oversupply or undersupply. There can be shifts when you have a recession, which is caused by Federal Reserve money manipulation. You can have a situation where there's shifts, or a period where there's a great unemployment, where people have to look for new jobs. But as far as China putting tariffs on U.S. products, well, if the U.S. companies can't sell those products to China, that means the demand for that labor will shift somewhere else in the United States. You would have to have a zero wage for there not to be jobs available. It gets a little more complicated because there's minimum wage laws and all that sort of thing, which can increase the unemployment rate. But other than just shifting unemployment, the idea that there's somehow jobs that need to be created by the government makes no sense. It's not like there's demand that needs to be created for milk or cheese or hamburgers or automobiles or any of this kind of stuff. There's a market, and there's a price where this stuff clears at. And labor does the same thing. It's a great myth that somehow there's this vast amount of labor that can't find work unless Donald Trump negotiates some kind of trade thing. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it's not easy and completely black and white. But, like you said, there's a lot of things here in the U.S. that are making that labor cost more expensive. And, you have the regulations, and you have minimum wage, and you have the Obamacare and different things like that have created an environment, and taxes, high corporate taxes, and personal income taxes, and it has made it very difficult for business to be done here. And then you try to have a free trade elsewhere, when you don't have free trade in the country. And then we have the immigration issue, which is driving down wages. It's just a whole mess. And unfortunately, because of a lack of a free market here in the country, it would seem like, to have a free market or free trade around the world, it just disadvantages the U.S. And maybe just get your final thoughts on that, and we'll move on to the next topic.
Kenneth, how would it disadvantage the United States? Given we've got the structure now, and Trump puts on tariffs, how does that help the United States?
Well, I think the goal is to have production happen here in the country for manufacturing companies to be able to come and do business here in the U.S., such as Ford, Chrysler, and these other companies, and Carrier, and all these businesses that he's incentivizing to be here. And that's jobs for the American people. Let me
stop you there, Kenneth, and ask you this. Why are these companies not here doing this in the United States now?
Well, I would say that it's not competitive. We have a high corporate tax rate here.
But what does that mean? That means wages are higher here in the United States, right?
Wages, it may not be real wages, though. It could be artificial wages because of, like you said, high minimum wage. You have a situation where we have, large amounts of illegal immigrants coming here, driving down the real wage, not just the minimum wage, the real wages in this country. And then you have... Well,
illegal immigrants is another question. I'm just trying to keep this really, really simple.
Sure, and then things like insurance.
Manufacturers are moving overseas, okay, because wages are lower there. What does that tell you? That tells you that employees here in the United States have other options. Otherwise, they would take the lower wages that are available overseas. It comes back to basic supply and demand. If you've got a situation where people aren't working, wages will come down unless they're at the minimum wage, which complicates it. But we're not talking about minimum wage jobs here, okay? Well, anybody that's working in the United States that possibly could get transferred to an auto plant is making more than the minimum wage, okay? So what you basically have is a situation where these people have other options. So by putting on a tariff and saying, well, we want these jobs back here, what you're doing is causing these people to go into a sector where, say Mexicans or South America or Asians or whatever the case might be are willing to work on products cheaper. So you sort of have to shift the labor to do this in the United States. So the people that are being shifted are no longer doing other jobs. So you're actually shrinking the amount of product that's being made. It's a silly thing to do. You're shrinking the product. If you've got Mexicans and Asians sending product here, that means our people can be working on other things. And by preventing them from sending that in, that means our people have to shift from what they're doing. So you're getting less product in. It's lowering the standard of living.
To a certain extent, I would agree with you, but at the same time, I think he wants to offset that with creating a more applicable, more business-friendly environment. And I do want to move on from this, Robert, and I do appreciate your comments on that. Okay, let's talk about this. Republicans and libertarians alike, Trump has seemed to connect these two people, more so than we saw, let's say, with Romney or McCain. And would you say that President Trump is a disruptor to the Republican Party, and is it for the better?
Well, I'm not sure that's the question that should be asked, because there are libertarians that have been attracted to him in the way that other Republicans have not attracted libertarians. And they do this because they see him as a battler of the establishment. However, they're also making a leap, which I think is not clear, and I don't think they should be making, that therefore he is against the deep state. He is against big government, and that's not the case. So the libertarians that are sort of supporting Trump are, in the way I see it, are making a grave error, because they see him attacking the establishment, but he's only attacking part of the establishment. Again, he's got Goldman Sachs people all around his administration. He has military people all around. Every indication is he's going to escalate wars overseas, and he has oil people. That's not a guy that is against the establishment. That's a establishment guy. There's what it is there's a battle within the deep state between the intelligence community, which wants to do things one way, and Trump and the military that want to do things another way. Goldman Sachs sort of slides. They'll work with whoever is there, and oil seems to be working that way. But the key here is the military versus the intelligence community. And Trump is just a deep state guy working with the military as opposed to the intelligence. And if you look, it's been a battle for decades. I mean, Petraeus was kicked out when he was head of the CIA. That's a military guy. CIA got him out of that. You had Flynn, who was head of the National Intelligence Agency, and they got him out of that. Another military guy, and then of course they got him out of the administration too. So you have this battle, and it's sort of been beneath the surface. But with Trump, it's become much more obvious. And libertarians who are supporting Trump sort of see part of the battle. They see him battling the intelligence community. They see him battling the mainstream media. But on the other hand, they don't really see that he's just another part of the deep state, or another section, another region of the deep state that is, again, Goldman Sachs, which seems to be able to work with any side of the deep state, the oil sector, and the heavy presence of the military, which is really where the confrontation with the deep state comes in, with the intelligence part of the deep state comes in. And so I think it's a grave mistake for libertarians to be supporting Trump. He's just about terrible on all issues, and is very authoritarian, both on a foreign policy perspective and a domestic.
Well, those are fair points, and I think fair concerns, especially when you talk about the Goldman Sachs ties, the oil ties, things like that. But I would also say that, he is a breath of fresh air in the sense that he's a little different than at least the same old. I mean, at least there's some resistance. I don't think it's going to be pretty difficult to get a guy like Ron Paul to be the president of the United States, which I fully supported and I really liked. But seeing someone like Trump at least win and beat out Hillary Clinton, and then we have things like Brexit, and then a female like Marine Le Pen here in France. It does seem like there's some sort of populist uprising, and to a certain extent, people are waking up. Would you see that happening at all on your end?
Well, I see the populist revolt. My view is that it's a clueless populist vote, and there's no attachment to liberty in this revolt. That's the problem, and I think Trump is probably more horrific than that. I mean, we're in the early stages here of his administration, and there are extreme indications that he's going to send U.S. combat troops in probably Syria, Iraq, and more in Afghanistan. And you're going to have crackdowns domestically, at least as far as drugs are concerned. I think it will go beyond that. And so I mean, he does attack in the intelligence community, and he does attack the media. But I think it's a mistake to interpret that as he's some kind of man that is going to introduce liberty. He's not. He's a very authoritarian guy, and when you look at the most important issues, war and liberty at home, and he's cracking down on illegal immigrants who are. I mean, he's very clever about it. He's saying he's only moving to push the criminals out, but that's not the case. If you see what's going on, it's a very broad-based directive he has, and now he doesn't even have an executive order. You sort of have TSA, ICE, and Homeland Security making up their own rules as they go along and tossing people out. So and we've seen reports of people being detained for quote unquote 10, 20 hours while they're being vetted, and some people being turned back. And we're only getting that on high-profile people. There was a New York City gallery owner who was sent back to Argentina. Muhammad Ali Jr., Muhammad Ali's son, was detained for 10 hours. And so these are high-profile people. But you wonder how many others the same thing is happening to that are not being reported on. So, he's not a good guy. If you're in favor of liberty, if you're in favor of freedom, if you're in favor of peace, this Donald Trump is not your man.
Well, I would just ask you one question on that. Are you okay with illegals or people coming from other countries not coming through in a legal way and disregarding the laws that are set in place? Because the fact is, people are coming here and they're a burden on the taxpayer to a large degree, and a lot of statistics show that.
Well, first of all, I'm a private property person, so I would prefer it if no one had papers. So I would prefer it if everybody in America could get in the situation the illegals were.
That's
that would be
complete reset, right? We would need a complete reset for that. Where we don't have a situation like that right now. Where
no, I'm just making clear what I would prefer. But as far as the idea that they're a drain, I have always said that there should be a welfare wall so that these people are not able to go on welfare, are not able to get government services of medical services or school services unless they pay for them. So I have no objection to that. But the idea that they're a drain in some other way, these are most of the ones I see are all very, very hardworking people. Mm-hmm. They clean the building where my office is in. I'm sure there's
no arguments there.
In right. There, where the restaurants I go, there's people washing dishes and bussing the tables, and they're hardworking people, and the employers that are employing them are certainly paying taxes. Wherever they live, the landlord is paying taxes. So it's kind of a myth that these people are not shouldering any of the burden as far as the taxes. Again, I prefer it where there'd be elimination of taxes all over the place, but that if these people are hardworking people and doing kind of jobs that I don't want to do and anyone I know doesn't want to do, I mean, I'm all for them. It would be a decrease in the standard of living for Americans if you take these people out. Where the hell are you going to get the people to clean the buildings and
that's a myth too, sir. I would have, and with all due respect, it's that Americans don't want to do it for $5 an hour. Americans are willing to do any job you give them for the right price, but the fact is we have to, basically get people from other countries who would otherwise have a worse alternative to come here to take that job for very, very low wages. But and then to put it frankly, if those people were not here, that job would sell for a higher price. And I firmly believe that.
Well, that's absolutely true. But you see, what you're saying here, though, understand, you're going to have to take people that are in other jobs. Again, it's a shift. If you block undocumenteds from getting into the country, there was going to have to be this tremendous shift where wages will go up for some, and they're going to have to shift into these, so they're not going to be producing whatever they're producing now. It's going to be less production in the country.
Those 95 million people not working right now.
Everybody is looking sort of at the middle factor. Okay, this guy has a job, then if he leaves, then somebody else is going to get it at a higher price, and they're looking at prices, but they're not looking. The key point is how much production is going on in the country. And when you stop the undocumented from coming into the country, you're going to have to take people that are doing other kinds of jobs, but there will be few. The restaurants will close down. Small hotels will close down. All kinds of things will close down if all these undocumenteds are actually pushed out of the country. But you will bring some. You will bring some employees away from whatever they're doing now to do some of the work at a higher price, so there will be less of it. But they're also not doing what their old job was. So you're cutting down on production in the United States. By definition, that lowers the standard of living.
Sorry, and then we'll just end here. I mean, I'll give you an opportunity to give a final thought on this if you'd like. But the fact is there's 95 million people not in the labor force right now. The urban communities are hurting, and which would love to have these jobs. If we have illegal immigrants coming, they're taking jobs that high school graduates might be taking, people that are poor now in the country that would have taken. It's not necessarily, we're at max employment and something's going to have to give. There's a lot of room for people that live in this country to absorb the labor that is being taken by people who are willing to work for very, very low wages. And that's just my thoughts. You're welcome to respond to that before we say goodbye here.
Yeah, again, I just have to say, if you believe in supply and demand, then market rates adjust, and you can't have people out of work who don't want to be out of work. It defies supply and demand. You're actually, whenever you say to me, or whenever anyone says to me, well, look at all these people that are unemployed, okay? And I see the average wage way, way, way above what the minimum wage is. Okay, you're basically defying the law of a basic fundamental law of supply and demand. That market's clear. There might be elitist unemployed out there who want to be astronauts and are only capable of sweeping a room, but that's their problem. You cannot have a situation where a market doesn't clear. It doesn't make any sense. Every other market clears. Why would labor not clear?
Well, I said I would stop there, but I would say that a lot of that labor is going overseas, and it's not clearing here in the country. So, Robert, real quick, let's get your thoughts on precious metals, gold and silver, in times such as this. Obviously, we talked about a lot of money being pumped into the economy, and the stock market, a lot of uncertainty out there. What are your thoughts on precious metals?
Well, basically, right now, I'm of the view that we're seeing an acceleration in price inflation that's been going on for, I would say, roughly 6 months now. I think it's going to intensify, and gold and silver is a very, very good place to be right now. I expect a lot.
All right. And if people want to learn more about what you do and the research and the publications that you run, please share with everyone what this is and where they would find it.
Sure. The best place to go is economicpolicyjournal.com. That's economicpolicyjournal.com. And that's sort of Grand Central Station. From there, you'll see links to the EPJ Daily Alert, which is the investment advisory service I put out, and some links to Target Liberty, and anything else I'm doing, you'll see it come through economicpolicyjournal.com.
All right, good deal, sir. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today. Maybe we'll have this conversation again in a couple months from now, see how everything's doing, the stock market, precious metals, and Trump. So thanks again for coming on.
Good. Sounds like a good deal, Kenneth. Would love to do it.